Economic Development, Downtown Planning, Councilman Schuff.
No report at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Does anyone see a need for a committee of the whole meeting? All right. We'll move on to reports of the officers. His Honor Mayor Aaron D. Montz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good catch there, Councilman Leopard. With this being my first meeting running the other side of things with the technology, I did fail to hit the record button. However, we do have it on Facebook Live, so we do have a recorded version of this. We'll probably just have to download it off of there onto the computer. So a few extra steps, but we still do have a full recording of the meeting, plus council clerk has her notes. So regardless, we should be fine, but good catch there. I did hit the record button. So anyways, lots of good news tonight, lots of exciting things to talk about. The first, we have two proclamations this evening. The first proclamation had to do with the naming of two baseball diamonds. I want to thank Councilman Gillig, who attended the ceremony and read the proclamation. It was for the naming of the two baseball diamonds at Oakley Park in honor of Dan Waters and Steve Allball, who were two really good leaders who did a lot for the youth of Tiffin for Little League Baseball here in the community. I know they each dedicated more than 30 years of their lives. So, you know, you look at these two individuals who unfortunately passed away here recently, and it's just a great way to honor Dan and Steve for everything that they've done. I know they had impact on many youth lives, myself included. I can remember Dan Waters coaching the Reds down in at Oakley Park, and just a great guy. So that proclamation was issued on the 31st of August, declaring Steve Allball and Dan Waters Day, and also naming the two fields at Oakley Park after those individuals. So thank you, Councilman Gillig, also for the assistance with a lot of that background information. Councilman Gillig, our resident historian, came up with a lot of great details on the two gentlemen's lives, and then he read the proclamation for us. So thank you, Ben, for taking care of that. The second proclamation is a proclamation declaring the month of September. It states, whereas all men are at risk for prostate cancer, and we encourage all citizens of Tiffin to increase the importance of prostate screenings, and hereby declaring the month of September Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in the city of Tiffin. It's pretty incredible how much the rates of prostate cancer have gone up. 1 in 9 men are diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetime, which is increasing every year. And especially African-American men are at the highest risk, and 1 in every 6 African-American men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their life. So this is a call to all men to ensure that they're getting proper prostate screenings, and declaring the month of September Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in the city of Tiffin. So those are the two proclamations that we have this evening. So I promised good news. First, I would like to announce that we have received a grant. I apologize, I'm not ignoring you all. I'm just looking at my other computer screen so I can share the information with you. So we have received a federal grant that funnels through the Ohio Department of Transportation to the tune of just over $1.2 million. And that will be for the full rebuild of East Perry Street between Jefferson Street and the intersection where Circular and Clinton Avenue all come together. So that section of roadway, unfortunately, has some real serious issues with the base. So every time that in the past years that we have paved East Market Street in this section, the paving is not even lasting as long as its useful life. So because of that, the engineers did some testing and discovered that that stretch of roadway actually is in very poor condition at the base level. So by obtaining this grant, now here's even the better news. I know, Councilman Jones, you're really going to appreciate this. As the watchdog of our treasury, you'll really appreciate it. This grant will cover 95% of all the construction and construction administration and inspection of that. So a huge thank you to the city engineer's office for all of their very hard behind the scenes work to obtain this grant. And also a big thank you to ODOT for helping push this project along and ensure that we were funded for it. So we are very excited. Total cost of the project will be about $1.4 million. And as we stated, about $1.2 million of that will be paid for out of this grant program. So it's just tremendous to really get that heavily used highway through town fully rebuilt. So exciting news. So Mr. President, just wanted to pass that along to the council members here this evening regarding that project. So one thing that Matt Watson pointed out to me, it's just incredible that Matt thinks that we've turned about $6 million in local funds over the last 5 years into about $10 million of infrastructure improvements because all the grants that we've been able to leverage here at the city. So big hats off to Matt and the rest of the folks here in the administration who are involved in these grant projects because it has just been extremely successful project after another. In this area of town, I know I'm looking right now on the other computer screen here at a couple of the pictures that he had of it, and you look through the pictures and there's no arguing that that section needs done. And it's hard to believe we only paved that a few years ago, which is what led us to the conclusion that there are significant base issues. You should, even on a state route like this, be able to pave about once every 8 to 10 years before that road needs it again. And this was well under that it was last paved. So we know that there are issues, and what happens a lot of the times that I was even unaware of. So with Tiffin being such an old community, most of our streets still have the original brick underneath them. And anytime there is a sewer or a water dig up or anything of that nature, it's next to impossible to get the right compaction or the bricks placed properly. And over time, with freezing and thawing and water getting in the cracks of the street, the bricks actually can begin to roll and move, which causes all these issues with the streets. So this project will remove any bricks that still remain underneath there and get a very solid base for the heavy vehicular traffic counts and especially semi-truck traffic that stretch of Market Street receives. So very good news. A couple of other items to share. We are in what we hope is the final stages. I had sent an email to city council members last week and that on Friday to discuss the creation of a relief program for coronavirus affected businesses in the Tiffin community. That relief program, we are still in the stages of fine tuning it. I know David Zach, who is assisting us at the Economic and Community Development Office. He and I talked various points late into the evening on Friday and over the weekend. In fact, we were still, as of about 4:30, 5 o'clock this evening, David and I were still discussing the programs. Part of it, we're still waiting on some clarification on some of the points of the program from the state auditor's office to proceed forward. So we're hesitant to put out definite information right now, but we're thinking with the overall program would be to appropriate about $633,000 of CARES Act funds that the city of Tiffin has received from the original CARES Act, the stimulus package. So $633,000 would be put aside into this fund, and then small businesses in Tiffin that were locally owned would be able to apply for grants from this fund up to $10,000 per business. Now, of course, we're, as we mentioned, still fine-tuning the program, but essentially what we're looking at is this will be for local businesses in Tiffin. We do not anticipate franchises being permitted to apply unless that franchise business is located in Tiffin and the owner lives here. If they do not live here and the business is not here in Tiffin, franchise would not be able to apply for this. The whole goal of this program is to assist the small mom and pop businesses in the Tiffin community You think about walking through the downtown or businesses out along West Market Street in the commercial corridor. And that's just naming two specific areas since there are clusters of businesses. But we really hope that we're able to extend a lifeline to these small businesses in Tiffin, because we know many of them had new expenditures incurred. We know a lot of them through the shutdown lost significant revenue that normally would have come into their business. I know I have talked to so many business owners here in the Tiffin community who tell me day in and day out that they're struggling. Please, at no cost, we can't afford to shut down again. $10,000 may not be the difference between having a banner year or not, but $10,000 can go a long way towards boosting these businesses and hopefully keeping them from closing and getting them through the pandemic. We know being a small business owner can be one of the most rewarding, yet one of the most stressful jobs out there. And our small businesses are really the backbone here of the Tiffin economy. So I would ask that City Council pass under emergency and suspend the resolution tonight creating this program. It would be very much like the facade enhancement program where City Council authorizes the expenditure, but of course the administration and our community development office would have the final ability to craft the program. A lot of that is because we have to have this first round of money spent by the middle of October. And with us still waiting to try to get answers from the state, we are not at a point that we can have every single factual item of this listed for all of you until we have everything clarified at the state level. Because the last thing we want to do is come back to City Council and state that, well, we gave some funds away to causes that were not legitimate for CARES Act, and we have to either track those funding sources down. We want to make sure we get this right out of the box. So we're asking Council to please suspend and pass the usage of this, the $633,000, and then allow the administration working with TSEP and the auditor's office to create the program and the inner workings of it. But what we are committed is that this is going to go to small, locally owned businesses here in Tiffin. So I know that was a lot of information. Like I said, the email that I put out to council members on Friday contains a lot of the points that we want to include in the program. But until we have final review from the auditor's office and the rest of the team that's putting this together, we don't want to publicly commit to it. So as soon as we have that ready, we will get out the details of the program to let small businesses in the community know that they can begin applying. So at this point, we cannot take applications yet until the program is finalized, but we hope to get there very soon. So the state kind of put us a little bit behind the curve with informing us of this money at the end of last week, and then telling us that you basically only have 5.5 weeks to spend it. But we're committed to developing a program that is going to help bail out our small businesses here in Tiffin. So I know that was a lot. I have another piece of good news. I'm going to try to multitask and talk a little bit about this, as at the same time I try to bring in Nick Dutro from TSEP to address you all. So Nick, if you're listening, that's your heads up that you're about to come into the room. So Nick and TSEP and the administration have been working tirelessly for the last, I don't want to misquote it, Nick, but I'm going to say at least 12, if not 16 months towards having a successful expansion at Ameriwood, which is owned by Dorel here in Tiffin. I know Nick is excited to let you all know this evening that we did, that was successful. And before I turn it over to Nick, I just wanted to tell City Council and the public, anyone who's watching, Nick Dutro and David Zach at TSEP, seriously, no one will ever know how much behind the scenes work went into this, and just, you know, how up in the air this project was. But these two gentlemen saw it through and helped bring the project home. You know, we always say that we here at the city, we do not create jobs or create investment, we create the environment for it. I think a big portion of that is the fact that the city of Tiffin established years ago, Council President Fote, I believe you were still at TSEP when we established I guess at that time it was called SIDEC, established our jobs creation tax credit program.
That's correct.
And out of that, we are here tonight asking City Council to approve the jobs creation tax credit program for the Ameriwood expansion. I believe it's 87 total jobs, but a real home run for the community. These jobs will be all the way from entry-level positions to management positions. But Nick, David just worked their tails off at Sept to make sure that Tiffin was the winner of this project, because it was very, very real that we either win this project or we may completely have lost this entire manufacturer in Tiffin. And these guys spent a lot of late hours and burnt the midnight oil to bring this project home. So I just wanted to state all of that before I turn things over to Nick, because they deserve a big pat on the back for all of their hard work. So Nick Dutro from Sept.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Mayor Mons and Council. Thank you very much for having me tonight. For more than a year now, as the mayor had stated, Sept's been working with our partners, Regional Growth Partnership, Northwest Ohio, the Jobs Ohio partner for our area, and consultant Mark Nelson on a hiring and investment project for Durrell Home Furnishings, again, the parent company of Ameriwood Industries here in Tiffin. Locally, Ameriwood Industries employs 218 full-time equivalents. The company primarily focuses on ready-to-assemble TV stands, desks, storage units, shelves, bookcases, and beds through 3 manufacturing companies in North America. There's 1 in Ontario, and then 2 in the United States, and then additional third-party manufacturers in China that they import goods through. Due to the competition and costs of running 3 home furnishing facilities in North America, Durrell has determined that 1 North American facility must be shuttered and combined either into the existing Dowagiac, Michigan or Tiffin facility. With the project that we're talking about tonight, the company would create 87 new jobs with an associated payroll of $282,871,000. The company retained 218 full-time equivalents with an associated payroll of more than $7 million. This project will result in a fixed asset investment, including $2,570,000 in machinery and equipment and $700,000 in building upgrades. Ohio is in strict competition for this project. Incentives from Jobs Ohio and locally were a major factor in the company's decision to move forward in Ohio in place of and putting the local investment here in Tiffin. July 27th, the Ohio Tax Credit Authority approved a jobs creation tax credit for Durrell, providing a 6-year tax credit. In addition, Jobs Ohio also provided a training grant and economic development grant, and the local Ohio Means Jobs office is offering programs valued at almost $400,000 for recruitment of new employees. So as the mayor alluded to tonight, we're here to ask to begin the process for the city's new jobs program. Based on hiring projections, in just the first year, the company would qualify for the tax credit program, which provides a maximum credit of up to 50% of new personal income taxes collected from qualifying new jobs for 5 years. I've had preliminary conversation with Mayor Mons almost since we started this project, again, almost a year ago. Hoping council will be able to discuss further, and if it has any questions, as we can hopefully move forward and have this determined at the September 21st meeting with suspension of the 3 reading rule in order for the company to hopefully begin hiring soon on this 87 person addition for the company. Again, be happy to make myself available at that time for any questions. And I know that there's a member of the consultant firm, Mark Nelson, who could also join at that time if council desires. With that said, any questions?
Yeah, Nick, what's the level of importance to the state for local contribution to this project?
So certainly having the local buy-in from council shows that our local economy, our local officials are also invested in this company staying here in Tiffin and Seneca County. There's a fairly significant investment that Jobs Ohio and the state is making for this project. So having that buy-in from local is incredibly important, and again, shows our commitment to making sure that these jobs stay here in Tiffin and Seneca County.
Thanks. Does anybody else have any questions for Nick? Okay, good job.
Thank you.
All right, give me 1 second to move Nick back to Well, Nick, I'm going to try to put you back to panelist, and if it doesn't work, you may have to rejoin. So I apologize if I accidentally kick you.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Councilman Gillig, you have your hand up?
Yeah, while the mayor's doing quadruple duty, does anyone remember when Ameriwood came to Tiffin? Around what year?
I'm going back. It was back in the 70s. Yeah. We can have Nick research the date for us, but yeah, it was back in the 70s. There were two. My memory's getting bad. I know there were two guys that started the business out of their garage, and I used to know their names.
Might be Miller.
Miller was one of them. Yeah.
Right. And I think it was even before the 70s, Rich.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be back in the late 50s, early 60s.
Okay.
It was Tiffin Enterprise, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a, yep. And then the guy that Buckeye, was it Buckeye Panel Ply?
Ray Ernst.
Ray Ernst. Thank you. Yeah, Ray Ernst. And what was Mr. Miller's first name? Anyway.
I'm not going to get that one. Sorry.
Well, you did great.
Well, this is a company with very established roots in Tiffin, so this is
Yes,
wonderful.
very much. Yeah, and it literally started in their. They started the business in their garage, and built it up from there. So, yeah.
I love those kinds of stories.
Two very unique individuals.
Yeah, and when this is said and done, there'll be somewhere between 250 and 300 employees now in the community. So,
Councilman Schuff, you had your hand up before.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Well, I wanted to let the mayor finish. Just a quick question for the mayor. As far as the street rebuild on Perry from Circular up to Jefferson area, I know you said it's going to be a complete rebuild. Was anything included in there as far as like the sidewalks go for that neighborhood or lighting, or is that something completely separate?
This grant cannot be used for sidewalks, so those will remain unchanged. However, if you recall, most of that block was already redone. Let's see, was it just this past year or was it last summer with the streetscape project in there near the library and the church? I just can't recall if that the years start to blend together. I think it was last summer that project was completed with all the decorative lampposts and the sidewalks. So much of that stretch has already been completed. There's just one small area, but this grant is for the street rebuild itself. But we would like to eventually complete that streetscape in that entire section, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, can I continue on, Mr. President?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is interesting. Trying to run the meeting on one screen and talk to you all with the other. So if you see steam starting to come out. All right. Yes. Okay. So I know we talked a little bit in committee of the whole about it, but the electrical vehicle charging stations. So the city of Tiffin received the grant for 2 of these stations, the total of $150,000. I just want to thank Charlene Watkins for her assistance with that, and to AEP for awarding the grant to the city. You know, I don't think anyone realizes just how big these potentially are, because, you know, you talk to folks that own electric vehicles, and a lot of them these days get 250, 300 miles to the charge. They will purposely plan their route out along, whether it's the country, whether it's the state, wherever they're making their trip. And they go to communities with electrical charging stations, just like you would ensuring that there were gas stations available. But these charging stations that we're receiving at the city are rapid chargers. They will be able to charge a nearly empty battery in just over 30 minutes. So very valuable for us, because the next closest one of these is in Bowling Green, which is just under an hour drive from here. So I think they'll be make it a very popular destination. We located these pumps or charging stations in city public parking lot number 7 downtown. And that we felt was, since it was completely in the center of the city, by having those pumps there, it allows the individuals who are charging their vehicles to hopefully go experience downtown Tiffin and some of the shops, our restaurants, small businesses, etc. So I think it's going to be very nice once these are installed. They should be completed late October or early November. And I know we did receive questions about it. They will have credit and debit card readers on the charging stations. So the user will be covering the cost of the electricity to charge their vehicle, so that it's not like the city is subsidizing and paying for this and folks are getting free electricity. They will pay for those volts that they're using to charge their vehicles. I do want to remind everyone, the census deadline is fast approaching. We really need Tiffin residents to get their census forms returned. The easiest way is to go right on to www.2020census.gov. Again, that's 2020census.gov. But I cannot begin to explain how important it is that we have a complete count here in Tiffin and Seneca County. There are countless grant dollars, whether it is for street paving, whether it is for law enforcement, fire department, fair housing, and low to moderate income housing. There are so many different grants and funding formulas that are based directly off the census, that if even a few hundred residents fail to return those forms, could completely throw our numbers off. We know Tiffin has grown. For the first time ever, since I think it was the 1970 census, have experienced a population increase. We need to make sure that is reflected. This year has been more difficult than ever because the college students were not here throughout most of that spring census time. There have been significant efforts made by the Census Bureau and our local census officers to get those college students counted. But there is real fear there that if we do not have an accurate census, with everyone being so distracted with everything going on right now, from coronavirus to the election, if we do not have a complete and accurate count here in Tiffin and Seneca County, it could really jeopardize a lot of money that comes back to Tiffin. And we have to remember that that is all of our tax dollars that we are sending off to the federal government in Washington, D.C. We want to make sure that Tiffin receives the most money back to our community that we possibly can receive. If we don't, those tax dollars that we are all sending into Washington, D.C. are going to go to Columbus and Cleveland and Bowling Green and Toledo and everywhere else that gets a complete and accurate count in. So please return your census forms. If someone stops at your house, verify that they are a census worker based off of their badge and documentation. Fill the form out right then and there, or go to 2020census.gov, get it completed. I know doing mine, I think it took between 5 and 7 minutes to complete the entire thing. It's very quick, it is free, and the data is 100% secure. It is actually against the law for the Census Bureau to release any of your personal data. Some updates to provide City Council on projects. Jefferson Street project began late last week. That is the streetscape project between Market and Perry Street. They're actually ahead of schedule, flying along with everything. Brent, you're going to lose your mowing duties that you have over there for the church, most likely. I know that that's kind of been your task for the last how many years. But once the streetscape's completed, those grass areas out by the boulevard will be eliminated. The beautiful stamped brickwork will be placed in, decorative lampposts and other items. That project will be 100% completed before the cold weather sets in. so a very aggressive construction timeline on Jefferson Street. I was asked to provide an update on the railroad safety project. You all know that the press release went out announcing the closure of North Monroe Street and Holme Street railroad crossings. Those crossings are being closed permanently as part of the railroad corridor safety enhancement project. The safety of our railroad crossings in Tiffin are all being drastically improved. Quad gates are being installed. Some crossings will have median stanchions installed down the middle so that cars cannot get around the closed gates. The real benefit to the community, other than safety, is once this is completed, we will no longer hear train whistles in the city of Tiffin. So train whistles will cease. This will become a quiet zone, which should really help folks that live or work near the railroad tracks and also increase property values of those individuals closer to the railroad tracks. We're pretty amazed that Tiffin averages a train whistle blow once every 2.5 to 3 minutes with the amount of train traffic we receive through the community. And we have had so many complaints over the years from residents who live near the railroad tracks of the excessive noise. And I think this is going to go a long way to allay those concerns that residents have, while also drastically increasing the safety of our railroad crossings. The project is ahead of schedule, and we hope to wrap things up late spring or early summer of next year. And as soon as the final piece of concrete is laid, we will then make application to the Federal Rail Authority to get the quiet zone approved. And hopefully by the middle of next summer or end of next year, we'll have a quiet zone citywide. Just a couple of other items. I want to congratulate Happy Days Nutrition and the Little Willow Learning Academy. Both had ribbon cuttings within the last week. It's always great to be able to go out to businesses and see that folks are still unafraid and opening new business endeavors here in the Tiffin community, even in the middle of the ongoing pandemic. So, you know, the folks at Happy Days certainly meet their mantra. They were extremely happy and welcoming to us for their ribbon cutting last week. And then I was thoroughly impressed today with Little Willow Learning Academy out near Don Yanatuno's ward. Little Willow, one of the nicest, cleanest, organized, and friendly learning academies that I've ever seen. And they are accepting kids all the way from preschool all the way up to 12 years old as they get them better prepared for their schooling. So a couple of exciting additions here to the Tiffin community. So, well, Mr. President, I think I've talked long enough. If there are any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Anyone have any questions for the mayor? Councilman Shuff.
Yeah, I had a question. Somebody had asked me and I wasn't sure how to correctly answer it. With the new Circle K being constructed there in front of Royal King and next to Bob Evans, I seen where they were digging the holes for the tanks. Now with their old location on Kroger, are they keeping that location or are they going to abandon that?
For the old location, Circle K will no longer operate once the new store opens. That was the reason for that, was because it was far too cramped and cluttered. And Circle K decided that by opening this newer, bigger, and more modern location, they would probably significantly increase their business. So they do plan to shutter the old location. I do not know if they're going to list it for sale or what their long-term plan is for the site, but they will shutter that old location sometime next year when the new facility opens.
Do you know if they're required by law to remove those tanks that are underground and potentially dangerous, or is that something that falls on the next owner, or is it something the government's gonna have to clean up?
I will check on that. I am not sure. The fire chief deals with underground storage tanks. He works with Buster a lot, the state agency, and I will check with the fire chief to see what he knows. Unless, Brent, do you have any ideas? Has ever come up in your long tenure as law director? But I don't believe they're required to remove them, Councilman Shuff, unless there's evidence of leakage.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to your question, but we can check and find out. If there's a transfer, there may be an inspection required. But I'll do some research and I'll bring it back an answer to the next council meeting.
Yeah, someone had asked me as one of those things. I didn't know if we'd have to deal with that 10 or 20 years down the road. Somebody asked me the question, I wasn't sure how to correctly answer that, so I appreciate it.
Yes, good question.
Any other questions for the mayor? Councilman Shuff.
Sorry, last one, because I've been getting this downtown a lot. Do we know why the power keeps going out downtown? I mean, I'm sure it's something to do with AEP, but do we know what's causing it or triggering the outage?
You know, I think it's been different every time. I can't remember if it was Dale or Mike Shannon. Somebody said this last one they think was just the squirrel getting fried in the transformer. And that's what knocked it out. So if you like fried squirrel, Councilman Shuff, just stand under there long enough. But I think it's been something different every time that it's going out here recently. I know it's frustrating because a lot of our businesses, it seems to be happening right about the time of the lunch hour, which is even more frustrating. But I don't have any more information other than the fact that it seems like each time recently it's been a different issue.
Yeah, I was just curious. It was twice in 2 weeks, and I just didn't want to see restaurants or whatever lose their product or their frozen yogurt go bad or their kegs go bad. I know, for instance, Reno's, they had a 250 sub order to get out at lunch hour and they had no power. So that made it pretty interesting for them, but just wondering what the cause was.
Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll direct this to the mayor. I spoke with one of our census workers last week, and that person assured me that counts would be given for Tiffin University and Heidelberg through the presidents. Is that correct? And are we going to have an actual count from the universities?
My understanding is they're supposed to obtain from the university student counts, but they're also supposed to incorporate the fact that a large portion of the students are elected to do online classes. So my understanding is they're taking the amount of students on campus now and using some sort of a formula to figure out what it should be. And I don't know if they're just going back the last 10 years and what is your average enrollment or how they're going about it. But yes, so that it just scares me because I know that we have a lot less college students in both universities right now because both of them have some online options for students. And neither campus has nearly the amount of students they normally would. So that's my concern. It was nice to see Tiffin University welcomed, I think it was 536 new students from 28 different countries this year, and just Tiffin University alone. So that was pretty neat to see.
Yeah, I was just concerned that we have some kind of accuracy with the universities and that, the city is represented by their attendance.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult year for the census. Of all the times for this to hit, this was not the ideal year. There's never an ideal year, but this is by far and away probably the worst year for it to hit between an election and census. And then the pandemic comes in and knocks everything down. And it's been a rough year, but you know what? That's what life is about. We get through it together.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Well, while we were talking about TU, I just wanted to commend them. If you drive through their campus lately, outside the students, even if they're by themselves, are wearing masks. And I even had, students always go by my house every day, and one was riding a bike with a mask on. So I just really want to commend them for stepping up and making sure they can stay open. I just thought that was awesome.
Any other questions for the mayor? Councilman Perry.
I just have a question about the grant program, and I know there's a lot of information in the email as well, but will companies, like local companies using Champ's Barbershop, for example, will they be able to collect lost revenue in those months, or does it just go to cover expenses, or or whatnot?
We're still researching that. It appears that lost revenue may be an option, but I don't want to tell people that, yes, that is a certainty until we have clarification from the state auditor's office, because the auditor's office is kind of the be-all, end-all when it comes to decision-making on how we use that. But it appears, based off of what I have read, that we can use that to help businesses offset losses during the time period that are directly related to the shutdown.
And would you guys go off the previous years? Like, I mean, would that, I'm sure there's a lot of things that go into it, but.
Well, it's funny because I actually had the state auditor, Auditor Faber, in my office today. He just happened to be in town and a lot of these questions came up. And that was even a question he had. He said, you know, it's not very clear what is a revenue loss and how do you define it? Is it since the beginning of the year? Is it since the state shut down? Is it since the first case of coronavirus in the local community? How is it defined? Well, they didn't define it. So he has that same issue and he's trying to track down, he and his office, they're trying to track down how exactly to define some of these items. That's kind of what we're waiting on. Our hands are somewhat tied until the state gives us direction, because we run the risk on, if we think we have interpreted it correctly, we hand the money out, and then the state comes back and tells us that we interpreted it incorrectly, we could potentially have to pay back any of those funds that we incorrectly interpreted. So the auditor's office is working feverishly to try to get answers or to clarify these points. And what he even told me today was that he would like to send out some sort of a guidance or a model that communities could use that would make it more simplified versus, you know, 250 cities doing 250 different things if every city decides to do this program. So we're kind of at their mercy right now, because I don't think any of us have an appetite for taking a $633,000 risk and finding out 2 years from now when we're audited for those numbers that we have to pay back half of it or all of it because we did things incorrectly. So that's why I know we're under a time crunch. I know businesses are hurting, but we need to get better information from the state. But you better believe as soon as we have that information, we will move the program forward and do what we can to help our local businesses.
Awesome. My last question, you think those charging stations can charge a big party bike? That would come in handy if it could.
I don't know. I guess you'll have to hook her up and see.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Is yours electric?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I mean, you would be able to use it just like anyone else as long as you're paying for the electricity. So I would assume, I don't know what your current runs on, but I would look up, the name right now is escaping me of the exact name of those fast chargers, but it was in the press release. So if you look them up, consult your manual and see if they're compatible.
Any other questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Our clerk of council, Ann Forrest.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ann. Director of Finance, Kathy Kaufman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to report to council on the month of August for 2020. Total receipts for the month were $4,575,161.71. Total expenses for the month were $3,894,316.27. The general fund unencumbered balance was $2,773,730.70. Income tax receipts for August 2020 were $873,291.63. Comparing that to August of 2019, that was an increase of $144,931.14. Overall, year to date, our income tax receipts are still down 1.49%. The amount that was transferred into Fund 215 for public streets for August was $107,700.73. In the month of August, the city received the second half of the real estate tax settlement from the county, and the amount that went into general fund was $381,121.14. As of Monday, September 14th, Sewer Revenue Office is going to be certifying the past due sewer bills that we have. The assessments for sewer was over $419,000, and Samantha has that completed and turned into the county. And we also have the sidewalks, mowing, trash pickup that we also bill for. Those assessments were also turned into the county today. So we are all set. Those are due by the 14th and all turned in. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for the finance director? Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor Mons talked about someone being a watchdog. I was looking over the bank reconciliation that Finance Director Kaufman put out. Two things caught my eye. One was a check for $902,000, and that was to Peterson somebody, and that had to be for the wastewater pre-treatment project. So I'm not going to address that one. But the other one that jumped out at me was Zoller Landscaping for just over $4,000. I guess I'm drawing a blank of why we would hire a outside contractor to do some city-related work. Just curious for my benefit and for the community's benefit, I guess.
Dale, do you know what that is? Because I did not sign any purchase orders for Zoller, so I'm not sure, Councilman Jones, but if Dale doesn't know, I'll look it up and get back with you.
Okay, I can get to specifics. I
can get the specifics. I suspect that I'll talk to Bryce tomorrow and get the specifics of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It may be Councilman Jones, and I probably shouldn't even hypothesize because I'll probably get it completely wrong, but it could be just due to the fact that we did not allow him to hire any summer help. That's about the only thing I could think of, is maybe he had to hire some work out that they could not get to this year. But again, I probably shouldn't even say that, imagine or hypothesizing, because I'm probably dead wrong. But that's what at least comes into my mind, is I know how strapped they've been because he had one of his 3 employees off on FMLA leave. So he was down to 2 employees when typically at this time they've got, what is it, probably close to 10 total out there helping with mowing and landscaping and all those items. So we'll find out and get you that information.
Any other questions, comments? Councilman Gillig.
No question, Mr. President, but I would so move that we accept the finance director's report and bank reconciliation as presented to us tonight, and also via email on September 1st.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Councilman Schuff.
Take the second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Director of Law, Brent T. Howard.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Wanted to give you, council and the public, an update and details about the discussions with the nearby townships regarding the cooperative development agreements. You may recall that back in the late 90s, the city negotiated agreements with Seneca County Commissioners, Hopewell Township trustees, Clinton Township trustees, and Eden Township trustees. And they entered into a cooperative development agreement, which laid out an understanding when annexation occurs into the city, certain revenue sharing that would be provided for a period of time in transition for the benefit of the townships, as that property would leave the township and come into the city. Those agreements were 20-year agreements. They expired last year, and you may recall that you extended them for an additional year to provide time for the city and the township representatives to discuss extending those for a period of time. The discussions among the city and township officials were very productive. And there's a great atmosphere of working together that's been demonstrated in a lot of ways in our community, and this is just another example. The parties have reached a proposed agreement. As part of that agreement, there is a requirement by statute to hold a joint public hearing so the public can comment on the proposed agreement. And that public hearing is scheduled for September 29th at 7 o'clock. It's by Zoom. There was a required public notice in the newspaper for that meeting. The notice with the Zoom instructions is located also at City Hall in the mayor's office, along with the proposed agreement that I'll describe in a minute. Also, the township trustees at their offices, they have the proposed agreement along with the county commissioners. And I can provide the Zoom instructions for anyone, and I'll forward that to city council members. The agreement essentially is an extension of another 20-year agreement among the parties. And what that allows then for is for annexation to occur, and as I said, some transition revenue sharing. It's the same as it was before, that for 15 years following an annexation, the real estate taxes for property that's annexed will be paid by the city to the affected township. The city also, in this matter, agreed to provide hotel tax if there would be any hotel tax on properties that were annexed for a 15-year period. That revenue would be also passed along to the impacted township. What this does is this allows for a person who owns property and wishes to be annexed. They then can use what's called an expedited process to become annexed into the city of Tiffin. We have, as you know, we have done this and worked with property owners who desire to become annexed into the city. We've worked with them to become part of the city and follow that process. But it's because of the cooperation of the city, the county, and the townships that we're able to allow for this process to occur and for growth to happen, which benefits everyone, whether it's housing, whether it is employment opportunities for people that live both in the township and the city. So it's been a very positive relationship with everyone involved, and it looks to me that it will continue. So there is this process, as I said. What will happen is after the following, the meeting on the 29th, each entity then in their open session will need to approve the agreement. So that means at your first meeting in October, you will need to pass legislation approving the cooperative development agreements with all the entities. And I would ask that that be approved as an emergency and under the suspension of 3 reading rule, because the current agreements, they will expire that first week of October, and this would allow for kind of uninterrupted time period for these agreements to be in place. It's a lot of information. I know the mayor has been active with the process along with the city administrator. Are there any questions for me or for those two?
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Thank you. When you mentioned property tax, so would we be collecting our property, say it's Hopewell Loudon, so would we be collecting Hopewell Loudon share, or would we be collecting Tiffin's share and they would receive Tiffin property tax to Hopewell?
Well, when a property is annexed, there is the inside millage that would was formerly went to the township trustees, the township government. Now, once it's within the city, it would go to the city of Tiffin. We then calculate that, and following the year by May 15th of the year, we then, based on information from the auditor's office and then calculated by the finance office, we pay that inside millage portion to the township, just like they would received it in the prior year. It does not affect, though, school tax. You know, that it doesn't change the border, the boundary of a school district.
Okay, thank you.
The millage that's paid, if the property becomes improved property, we only pay on what it was when the property was annexed.
No, we pay all of the taxes for that. So if there's an improvement that benefits the township, and in most cases there are improvements because there are plans for housing or commercial or industrial improvements, and so those taxes go to and are part of what we would pay to the township.
Somebody else had their hand up. City Administrator Thornton.
If I may, Mr. President, I'd like to respond to Councilman Jones' question about the $4,000. That was money that we paid to Zoller for maintenance of the East Green. As you may remember, we have a maintenance agreement with the East Green Foundation, and there are certain expenses that are reimbursable to us. That $4,000 will return to the city at the end of the year. At the end of the year, any monies we spend on East Green Foundation are returned to us.
Thanks. Anything else for the law director? Just one comment. I think we were the first community in Ohio to develop this type of an agreement with the surrounding townships in the county, and this eliminated a huge obstacle to development. In the past, annexation was always thrown up in our face, and we were really hamstrung on our ability to expand our limits, and it held back development for a long time. And if you want a good example, go out on West Market Street. I believe that the city limits, when that agreement was originally signed, was the old Kroger store on that side of Market Street, and on the other side, it was down there by where the Subway shop is now, I believe. So anyway, you look at all the development that's taken place out there, and one of the reasons is because we had this agreement and eliminated fighting. You know, when people from out of town came in to talk to us, they wanted to know that they had people who wanted them here. They didn't want a lot of infighting. So it eliminated one huge obstacle to development. So this agreement has been very, very important to Tiffin and to the townships and to the county. So hopefully we'll all pass it and support it. Anything else, Law Director?
No, that concludes my report.
Thank you. We're now under written communications.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have Mayor's request for legislation number 20-32, legislation for subcontractors for city income tax purposes.
Request for legislation 20-32 will be directed to the Finance Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 20-34, AEP, installing street light on South River Road.
Request for legislation 20-34 will be directed to the Street, Sidewalk, and Sewer Committee.
Mayor's request for legislation number 20-35, jobs creation tax credit for Durrell Home Furnishings Incorporated.
All right, I was going to assign this to the Economic Development Committee, but after hearing Nick Dutro's presentation this evening, I'd like to get a consensus from the committee, or from the council, excuse me, on moving ahead with getting the legislation prepared. So I'm going to ask Councilman Schuff to make a motion. If there's a second, we can discuss it, move ahead with this.
Yes, President, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the jobs creation tax credit for Doral Home Furnishings Incorporated.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilwoman Yanatuno.
A second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the vote, please.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Leopard.
Yes.
Harry.
Yes.
Schuff.
Yes.
Boyle.
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 7-0. We'll ask the law director to please prepare the legislation for our next meeting. Thank you. Thank all of you.
Then there's Mayor's request for legislation number 20-36, updates to Ordinance Chapter 163, Shade Tree and Beautification Commission, and Ordinance 931.17, Streets, Utilities, and Public Service Code.
Request for legislation 20-36 is directed to the Recreation and Public Property Committee.
I have Finance Director's request for legislation number F20-39 to amend the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 in order to increase expenses in health and life insurance in the Probation Department budget.
Legislative request F20-39 will be directed to the Finance Committee.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F20-40 to amend the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to appropriate funds into the Fire Department budget.
You have to forgive me. I got behind myself here. F20-39, there's already legislation prepared for this evening. So we'll hold that on file in the clerk's office. I apologize. Request for legislation F20-40. That also, legislation has also been prepared for tonight's meeting, and that request will be held on file in the clerk's office. Thank you.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F20-41 to amend the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to appropriate funds into the capital improvements budget.
Legislative request F20-41 will be held on file. Legislation has been prepared for tonight's meeting.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F20-42 to amend the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to appropriate funds into the Parks Department budget.
Legislative request F20-42 will be held on file in the clerk's office. Legislation has been prepared for tonight's meeting.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F20-43 to amend the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to allow for the recording of the second disbursement of CARES Act coronavirus relief funds.
Legislative request F20-43 will be held on file in the clerk's office. Legislation has been prepared for tonight's meeting.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F20-44 to amend the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to appropriate funds into the Parks Department.
Legislative request F20-44 will be held on file in the clerk's office. Legislation has been prepared for tonight's meeting.
Finance Director's request for legislation number F20-45 to amend the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 in order to increase expenses in Miami Street project refunds.
Legislative request F 20-45 will be held on file in the clerk's office. Legislation has been prepared for tonight's meeting.
We also have Mayor's letter of appreciation to Aqua Ohio for their donation of $1,000 to be used to offset the expense for painting the outdoor pool at Hedges Boyer Park.
This will be held on file in the clerk's office. We'd also like to thank and congratulate Aqua for their generous donation.
And then today, this afternoon actually, I received a notice from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, so it's not in your packet, for the transfer of a liquor permit from Coco's Sports Bar and Grill at 271 South Sandusky Street to J.Z. Brothers LLC at the same address.
This request will be directed to the Street Sidewalk and Sewer Committee. Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Street Sidewalk and Sewer Committee conferred earlier this evening, and we authorized the council clerk to sign and return the document to the state of Ohio.
Okay, thank you.
3 of its 4 members agreed.
And Mr. President, that concludes the written communications.
Thank you. We're now under oral communications. Anybody from the attending public who's listening in this evening would like to address council, please raise your hand, let us know, and direct your comments to the President of Council. You have a maximum time limit of 5 minutes.
For clarification, anyone watching, you don't actually raise your hand. There's a little button on your Zoom screen that says raise hand. Press that because we cannot see any of you at home. So I don't see anyone, Council President.
Okay.
I don't see any hands.
Okay. We'll move on to, are there any motions? We're now under resolutions.
Resolution number 20-29 introduced by Ty Schuff. Resolution accepting, approving, and endorsing the Seneca County Multi-Jurisdictional Comprehensive Plan.
This is the second reading of Resolution 20-29.
Resolution number 20-30 introduced by Steve Leopard. Resolution authorizing the mayor to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission, OPWC, State Capital Improvement Program to execute contracts as required and declaring an emergency.
This is the second reading of Resolution 20-30. Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask for suspension of City Council's 3 reading rule and passage of Resolution number 20-30.
We have a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule and immediate passage of Resolution 20-30. Is there a second? Councilman Gilly.
I'd like to second the motion, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. This came before City Council at our last meeting, and I'd like to thank City Engineer Matt Watson and Law Director Brent Howard for all of their effort in getting that to us 22 days ago. During Councilwoman Boyle's committee meeting, we didn't think we would have it until tonight, but and the only reason I signed it was I was available at the time, just prior to 4:30. 3 weeks ago to sign it. We had quite a bit of discussion on that at our last meeting, and I think we're pretty much in agreement that this needs to be suspended and passed. We do have a September 17th deadline to return this to the, I assume, ODOT, or Ohio Public Works Commission.
Right.
Okay. Councilwoman Boyle.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Councilman Leopard. I completely agree with his comments. Thank you very much to the city engineer and to Brent for all your hard work on this. I really appreciate it. I know the rest of council, I'm sure, agrees with that. So I just want to also say thank you for the efforts put forth.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the vote, please, on the suspension.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Resolution 20-30 is suspended with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Duff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
The emergency passes with a vote of 7-0, and we'll now vote on the passage.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Duff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Resolution 20-30 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Resolution number 20-31, introduced by Ben Gillig. Resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and declaring an emergency.
This is the first reading of Resolution 20-31.
Resolution number 20-32, introduced by Ben Gillig. Resolution approving the expenditure of funds received under the CARES Act in the manner prescribed by and consistent with the requirements of the law, including a small business relief program and declaring an emergency.
This is the first reading of Resolution 20-32. Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to ask for suspension of council's three reading rule and immediate passage of Resolution 20-32.
We have a motion to suspend the three reading rule for Resolution 20-32 and immediate passage. Is there a second? Councilwoman Yanatuno.
A second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe the mayor outlined this very well during his report, but we are taking a round of Corona Cares funding and creating a small business grant program, kind of similar to what we have with the facade enhancement grant, to really help out some of our small businesses that have been hit so hard by this pandemic. The reason why we're asking for suspension, there's a very short turnaround time, and any money that is not spent, we would have to return. So we are asking for suspension for that reason.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilwoman Yanatuno.
I just think this is a really nice idea. I'd like to say that, we need to go back to March and think about how these small businesses were totally shut down, which still means they had their utility bills, property taxes, and all their overhead while they were shut down for quite a few weeks. And so if this helps them, it's a great idea. And thank you for thinking of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great idea too. Shut down through no fault of their own too. So, any other comments? Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking of this, and I briefly spoke with the mayor about it, I know a maximum of $10,000, and if 63 downtown businesses requested the full amount of $10,000, to me, it's like one person winning a $100 million lottery. I would rather see 100 people get $1 million each instead of one person getting 100 million. With that being said, if we targeted 5,000 max per business, that would benefit up to 126 people. If we would allow, say, $2,000, that would help 316 businesses. And I would just hope as the mayor or Sept looks at this, they would take that into consideration. And item 2, when we talked about a 10% reduction in the sewer revenue rates, the first thing Law Director Howard spoke about, you can't target one group of people or a single group for a reduction. You have to do it for everyone. If that was the case in 10% reduction in the sewer revenue rate, I'm not sure why this wouldn't apply to our Tiffin CARES Act, that we would have to include everyone. So what's the difference between including everyone on the reduction of sewer revenue and the Tiffin CARES Act? And the reason I'm bringing that up is I know it's businesses in downtown Tiffin, and whether you're a fan of massage parlors or tattoo places or other small businesses, I just thinking fair for one, fair for all. So I just thought I'd throw that out for discussion.
Law Director.
Yeah, maybe I should comment since Ken referred to me. And my comments regarding the sewer, there is certain statutory language and consistent with our charter that sewer rates are supposed to be just and equitable. So there is some legal guidance to say that they should be fair to all. So that's why I made my comment regarding sewer rates. So that's the basis for I think your determination that you shouldn't treat different classes of customers differently because of that statutory requirement. So that gives you the background of that. My 2 cents on this plan is that you are going to treat, I believe, all small businesses around the city. I don't believe it's just for the downtown. I believe it's throughout the city. And so that whole group is going to be treated in the same way. And there are no, I don't believe that there's a particular statutory requirement that the funds need to be given to everyone in the community, let's say, individuals, businesses. And in fact, I think that there might be some guidance towards using this, as other communities are, for small businesses in communities. So those are my 2 cents in response to your statement.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Having been a small business owner for 35 years, I could never apply for unemployment. And so the big difference is these people were shut down at least 6 to 8 weeks totally with no access to revenue. And $5,000 isn't going to really do it for them with that much shutdown. They're going to need the $10,000. And if it keeps these guys operating, I'm happy to help them. And it is not just downtown Tiffin, it is all of Tiffin small businesses. And so we just need to be really clear on that.
Councilman Giller, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Councilman Jones, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I sort of had a similar thought, you know, seeing that vape stores and tobacco stores would be ineligible. And I did discuss this with the mayor. That is guidance from the state, and not just, you know, we did a pick and choose type thing.
Councilman Jones.
Thank you for those comments. I'm thinking back in 2019, I attended a council meeting. Nancy Grandillo representing the landlords, and I think it was Herb Faith, or whatever his name is, Herb Faber. They were not looking for a handout, they were looking for a hand up. Is a landlord considered a small business for profit in Tiffin area?
I don't have the specific answer to that without doing some research.
Okay. The reason I bring it up is I'm back to, and I know Councilwoman Yanatuno said $5,000 may not help a business. If that's the case, don't apply. I'm sure there's another 126 small businesses would like to have $5,000. And if it could include landlords, and I'm not a landlord, but I'm guessing some of these landlords have been out monthly rent due to no evictions, et cetera. $2,000 would help them. And again, that would help 316 businesses. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
I would assume being a landlord is not the same thing because they aren't shut down. They'll still get their rent. They may be waiting a little bit, but they'll still get their rent. And so it's not, again, the same thing as small businesses were told, shut your doors. And so yes, 5,000 would help them, but it doesn't begin to cover what all they lost.
Mayor, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that because of how the legislation is written, it allows us to craft this program in a way that it is beneficial to as many different businesses as we can. So, you know, I would hope that council would approve the appropriation of the money tonight and allow the formulation of the program up to us. We've heard everyone's comments. We really do appreciate the feedback from City Council. And let us work at a program and run it by all of you and get it out there once we have the finer details. So we're happy to include or consider any ideas that council members have, but we don't even have the details of the program finalized yet on our end.
Councilman Gillig.
And to that end, and thank you, Mr. President. To that end, it's not that automatically everyone will get $10,000. You know, they'll have to meet certain requirements for lost revenue, so on and so forth. So we could very well wind up helping more than the, I believe you did the math, 63 otherwise. So I have trust in the mayor and trust in TSEP that they will use these funds judiciously and help as many folks as they can.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, clerk will call the vote on the suspension, please.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard, Councilman Leopard,
You're muted, Steve.
You're mute.
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Schuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig,
Yes.
Did Councilman Perry vote? I didn't hear him. Did he? All right. The suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Perry, Councilman Perry.
We appear to have lost Councilman Perry.
Yeah.
His screen froze a second ago. And he's rejoining. 1 second. Must have lost internet connection. Councilman Perry, if you can hear us, you're up for vote.
Yes. Sorry, my internet's going in and out.
Thank you. Schuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
The emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Schuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Resolution 20-32 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 20-87, introduced by Ben Gillig. Ordinance amending the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to increase expenses in health and life insurance in the probation department budget by $3,200.
This is the first reading of ordinance 20-87. Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask for suspension of council's 3-reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 20-87.
We have a request to suspend the 3-reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 20-87. Is there a second? Councilwoman Boyle.
Yes, I'll second that, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't believe I have ordinance 2087 in front of me, and I see it is for health and life insurance. Could someone expand on this $3,200? Is it for one person, a family, 10 people? I want to make sure I know what I'm voting for or against before I vote.
Finance Director?
Yeah, I can answer that. This is a probation department, and it was for one employee changing their health insurance from single to, I believe it was employee spouse. So we just need to make sure we have enough money to get through the end of the year.
And this is the one we spoke about at another meeting previously.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, the clerk will call the vote, please, on the suspension.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Schuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
The suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on passage of the bill.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Schuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Ordinance 20-87 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 20-88, introduced by Ben Gillig. Ordinance amending the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to appropriate $445 into the Fire Rescue Division budget for a training refund.
This is the first reading of Ordinance 20-88. Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to ask for suspension of council's three reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 20-88.
We have a motion to suspend the three reading rule for Ordinance 20-88 and immediate passage. Is there a second? Councilman Perry.
I'll second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, President. This is for a refund for a training that was not held. So this is just putting that money back into our police budget.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, the clerk will call the vote on the suspension.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Schuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
The suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Schuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Ordinance 20-88 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 20-89, introduced by Ben Gillig. Ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept an AEP grant for 2 electric charging stations, amending the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to appropriate $150,000 into the capital improvement budget and declaring an emergency.
This is the first reading of Ordinance 20-89. Councilman Gillig.
I apologize for this. For some reason, I don't have it circled. Mr. Mayor, would you like this suspended
Yes.
this evening? Okay. With that said, I would like to ask for suspension of council's three reading rule and immediate passage of 20-89.
We have a motion to suspend the three reading rule and the immediate passage of Ordinance 20-89. Is there a second? Councilman Leopard.
I'll second the motion, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know we talked about this at the council, the whole meeting, but tonight's the first reading. I understand that. 2 weeks from now, if we meet on September 22nd, that's the second reading. If we wait another 2 weeks, October 6th, that'd be the third reading. That passes, the mayor signs it. We still have 30 days up until November the 4th. Are we saying we cannot get these chargers up and running before 11/4, and that's why we have to pass this as an emergency and skip the three reading rule?
Mayor, do you want to comment?
Yes, because the construction schedule is outside of our control. We're not the ones installing it.
Okay, thank you. Enough said.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, the clerk will call the vote on the suspension.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Chuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
The suspension passes with a vote of 7-0, and we'll now vote on the emergency.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Chuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
The emergency passes with a vote of 7-0. We will now vote on the passage.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Chuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Ordinance 20-89 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 20-90, introduced by Ben Gillig. Ordinance amending the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to appropriate a $1,000 from Aqua Ohio into the Parks Department budget.
This is the first reading of ordinance 20-90. Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, Mr. President. In order to put this generous donation by Aqua to use, I would like to ask for suspension of council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 20-90.
We have a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule and the immediate passage of ordinance 20-90. Is there a second? Councilman Schuff.
I'd like to second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the vote on the suspension, please.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Chuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
The suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Chuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Ordinance 20-90 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 20-91, introduced by Ben Gillig. Ordinance amending the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to allow for the recording of the second disbursement of CARES Act coronavirus relief funds in the amount of $183,031.25.
This is the first reading of ordinance 20-91. Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, Mr. President. In order to accept this round of relief funds from the CARES Act coronavirus relief funds, I would like to ask for suspension of ordinance 20-91, or excuse me, I'd like to ask for suspension of council's 3 reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 20-91.
We have a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule and the immediate passage of ordinance 20-91. Is there a second? Councilman Perry.
A second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I see here this is being directed towards Fund 296.220.5100, personal services and wages. I heard someone earlier say that was for the police department. Is this specifically for the police department, or aren't there other departments in the city of Tiffin that could use some personal service wages as part of this second flow of CARES Act?
Mayor, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, the first round that we received, we applied towards fire EMS. On the second round, we have applied to the police department, because those are both the first responder departments within the city. And those are the only 2 that you are permitted to presume that their runs / overtime are due to coronavirus. Anyone else in the city, we would have to do excessive documentation. This is the simplest way to go about to ensure that we're using those funds properly.
Okay, thank you. That clears it up.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the vote on the suspension, please.
Councilwoman Yanatuno,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Leopard,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Chuff,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
The suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Leopard.
Yes.
Harry.
Yes.
Duff.
Yes.
Boyle.
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Ordinance 20-91 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 20-92, introduced by Ben Gillig. Ordinance amending the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to appropriate $347.04 into the Parks Department budget for funds received for a memorial bench at Hedges Boyer Park.
This is the first reading of ordinance 20-92. Is your arm getting tired there, Councilman Gillig?
No, that's why I do my regimen of curls and such. Thank you, Mr. President. So that we can put this generous donation to use in the Parks Department immediately, I would like to request suspension of our through reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 20-92.
We have a motion to suspend the three reading rule and the immediate passage of ordinance 20-92. Is there a second? Councilman Leopard.
I'll second the motion, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the vote on the suspension.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Leopard.
Yes.
Harry.
Yes.
Duff.
Yes.
Boyle.
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Ordinance 20-92 is suspended with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Leopard.
Yes.
Harry.
Yes.
Duff.
Yes.
Boyle.
Yes.
Councilman Gillig.
Yes.
Ordinance 20-92 passes with a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance number 20-93, introduced by Ben Gillig. Ordinance amending the 2020 Budget Ordinance 19-84 to appropriate $160,350.25 for a refund in the Miami Street project.
This is the first reading of ordinance 20-93. Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, you discussed this at Committee of the Whole, but if you would kind of summarize it again, it'd be greatly appreciated. But I would like to ask for suspension of council's three reading rule and immediate passage of ordinance 20-93.
We have a motion to suspend the three reading rule and the immediate passage of ordinance 20-93. Is there a second? Councilwoman Yanatuno.
I'll second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Mayor.
Councilman Gillig asked me to explain this. So the Miami Street project, which was recently completed and everything closed out as far as purchase orders go to all contractors, came in significantly under budget. Because of that, if you recall, the majority of that project was paid for by a grant. So the remaining money, we used all the grant money, but the remaining money that was still available was then split accordingly, as it should be, to send back to the city of Tiffin and Tiffin University, who were the two contributors beyond the grant to get the project completed. So that's what this money is doing, is finally closing out all accounts and returning the money to Tiffin University from their share of what they had given us for the project. To be clear, it's not all the money Tiffin University had given us, just their portion of what was already agreed to at the beginning of the project.
Thank you, Mayor. Are any other comments? Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Had a note here to myself, and I understand Tiffin University, thank them for chipping in on this project here. So after it's all said and done and we were under budget, is Tiffin going to save money on this project? And if so, how much?
Are you asking the city of Tiffin directly?
Correct.
I probably should have thought to have brought those totals. Kathy, do you have any access to them quickly? Or if not, that will have to be an item that we'll follow up on you with, Ken. because I do not, yes, I know we saved a lot of money as well. I know it was, I believe, somewhere over $100,000 that we saved.
Okay, that's close enough. Thank you. That's good. That's good enough. Thanks.
Yeah, it was significant dollars that we were able to return also. And then Tiffin University, who paid even more of the project, is getting 160 back. So TU, the nice part is, still owes us roughly this amount for the railroad project, what they have donated. So I believe the last understanding in the conversation I have with President Schumacher is they're just going to essentially reissue a new check with this money that we're giving them back, because it's the way we need to do things for audit purposes, for them to go ahead and pay off their portion of the railroad project. So we'll get a lot of this money back for the other project that we're partnering with Tiffin University on.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the vote on the suspension, please.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Leopard.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes.
Duff.
Yes.
Boyle.
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
The suspension passes with a vote of 7-0. We'll now vote on the passage.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Leopard.
Yes.
Perry. Shuff.
Yes.
Boyle.
Yes.
Gillig.
Yes.
Ordinance 20-93 passes with a vote of 7-0.
That concludes the ordinances, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ann. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to schedule a street sidewalk and sewer committee meeting for the purpose of request for legislation 20-24, street lamp installation at the cul-de-sac on South River Road. I think we can actually do this on site. I checked the weather for next Monday, and the weather's going to be good, 72 degrees and sunny. I believe we could even drive down there, even though I walked it this morning to visit the site. The street is compacted very good, and it's not like we need to get in there and turn around. There's enough space where we can back up and go.
So that's Monday.
4 o'clock, if it works out for everyone. Dawn says yes. Tyler and Ken?
14th, you're talking 14th, correct? Monday,
Correct.
14th? Yep, that's good for me.
Steve, I may be out of state. If I'm here, I'll be there. If I'm not there, I'm in a different part of the.
Not a problem. I would like to call a street sidewalk and sewer committee meeting for September the 14th at 4 p.m. To be held at South River Road, the new cul-de-sac that's going in. That would be right beside the water company. Just drive down the street. Or you can walk if you wish. It's not that far. The purpose of the meeting is a request for legislation 20-34 street lamp installation at the cul-de-sac. And any other business that may come before the committee.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes, I'd like to set a meeting of the Recreation and Public Property Committee, which would be Dan Perry and Ken Jones. My schedule's pretty flexible, so what would work for you, gentlemen? We'll try to do it by Zoom.
Let Dan pick a date. Go ahead.
Probably next, like Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I'm usually off. So those usually work out pretty well.
What's a good time?
I'd have to check my wife's schedule to make sure whether we're interrupted a bunch or no kids. So.
Well, is like 7 better or 4 or 5 better?
She usually gets home about 7, so I mean later in the day works better for me.
Yeah, 'cause it won't take very long because the one's all outlined and we just have to look at the other one.
Okay.
So would you mind 7:30?
That'd be fine. Yep.
Cool.
So looking at September 15th at 7:30 will work.
That'll work.
Work for me.
Okay. Now for Dale, do you think that time frame will work out? And Brent, will that work out for you and possibly Dale and Bryce Kuhn and possibly the police chief? Is that enough notice? Specifically for the park ordinance?
Dawn, I have another meeting that evening, so I will not be able to attend on the 15th.
Okay, so if we just let you know what we need to do is good enough?
That's fine.
Okay,
The 15th at 7:30 is fine for me.
okay. And I'll let Bryce know also. Okay, so I'd like to set this, and so I keep flipping my papers. So I'd like to set a meeting of the Recreation and Public Property Committee for September 15th at 7:30 to discuss ordinances 935.03 in regards to the parks and 931.17 in regards to the shade tree beautification. We're going over their ordinances and any other business that will come before the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Law Director.
Yeah, I don't believe it's been announced, but want to remind council that tomorrow night is a Charter Review Commission meeting at 6 o'clock via Zoom. And on the agenda is to review the first 4 articles of the sections of the charter, and that includes section 3, which is council, and section 4, which is legislative process. So if you have any comments, and these are articles 3 and 4, along with article 1 and 2, if you'd like to participate, you can participate by Zoom and give any comments or respond to any proposals that you might hear. This won't be the only meeting at which you'll be able to present ideas to the commission, but they are dedicating the primary purpose tomorrow night is to hear any comments and suggestions regarding the first 4 articles of the charter.
Thank you. Councilman Jones.
Well, Law Director Howard, could you send me that link? I'd be glad to join in on that tomorrow. Or how would I get on it, I guess, either way.
Yeah, I can send you the link. I believe that I have received it. I can't guarantee that. I should have, but I'll make sure that you get the instructions that you can participate.
Councilman Jones, I will send you an invitation right now.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, would you mind sending the invitation to all of us?
Sure. Yeah.
And also, if I may, I'd like to discuss scheduling a finance committee meeting. Councilman Schuff and Councilwoman Boyle, we are back at school, but I can meet, just about any time after 3:30, 4 o'clock, whatever the case may be. Councilman Schuff, would you be able to join us via Zoom if you're out of state?
Yeah, I can try to do that. If you set a time and date, as long as I have an internet signal, as long as I'm not too far out in the sticks, I'd be happy to join.
Wonderful. Councilwoman Boyle, how does your schedule look next week?
Sorry. I can do like Tuesday at 4 or I could do Monday at 4 or after 4. Yes,
How about Tuesday at 4?
Okay.
Provided Councilman Schuff's 5G network is working. Okay. Therefore, I'd like to announce a Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, September 16th, I believe it is.
15th.
15th.
Tuesday, September 15th at 4 p.m. Will be held via Zoom. And the purpose of the meeting is Mayor's request for legislation 20-32, which involves legislation for subcontractors for city income tax purposes, as well as any other business that may come before the committee. Mr. Mayor or City Administrator Thornton or Kathy, I should ask you, is that time conducive to your schedule via Zoom?
The only concern I have is I have to conduct the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing that day at 3 p.m. And it just depends how long it takes them to get through their docket. They're typically done in an hour. But if they are not, I would not be able to arrive in your meeting or conduct yours because you only run one meeting per account. So I'm going to say it may be best if you either, two options, to push your meeting time back, or the other option, you could have Dale or Kathy or someone else with a Zoom account set it up, but I can't run two meetings at once. It will kick us out. So.
City Administrator Thornton or would that work?
Sure, I can set up a Zoom meeting for you. That would not be a problem.
Wonderful.
My thought was additionally, a third option would be to follow the Street, Sidewalk, and Sewer Committee on the 14th. They're meeting at 4.
Councilman Schuff would be out of town. Councilwoman Boyle, would you be able, are you talking, you want us to meet in person or via?
No, still, these are all via Zoom, Ben, I'm sorry.
Yeah, does that work for you, Councilwoman Boyle, or not especially?
No, that's fine. I can do Monday.
Okay. I amend my announcement, Council President. We are going to hold a Finance Committee meeting on Monday, September 14th at 4 p.m. via Zoom. Purpose of the meeting is Mayor's request for legislation 20-32, legislation for subcontractors for city income tax purposes, and any other business that may come before the committee.
Councilwoman Yantuno.
Or City Administrator, could you set up my Zoom also? Because I don't know how to do it.
I would be happy to do that for you,
Thank you.
Councilwoman Yantuno.
Thank you.
I will, I'll get these council committee meetings set up because that way we can also broadcast them to the Facebook account. So Dale, I'll go ahead and set them up so that way people can watch them live if they, it's just better for transparency. So September 14th, Monday, Street, Sidewalk, and Sewers at 4. Finance, Ben, you said yours was when?
Gosh, I think I said 4, but do we need to push that back?
I think I had mentioned to follow Street, Sidewalk, and Sewer Committee.
So
knowing it was at 4.
Street, Sidewalks, and Sewer Committee? Would that work?
You still have to set a time, I believe. I think legally you have to actually name a time, don't they, Brent?
Yeah, I think that you should, especially since the Street, Sidewalk, and Sewer Committee meeting is going to be held outdoors down on South River Road, I believe. So you may want to have time to get back to wherever you are to participate by Zoom.
Councilman Leopard.
I would assume the Street, Sidewalk, and Sewer Committee meeting wouldn't last any more than 20 minutes. I think it could be done in 10 if we put our hearts to it.
You want to say 4:30, Ben?
Councilman Gillig?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think that would be ideal.
Okay, so I will get, so I've got Street, Sidewalk, and Sewer. No, I don't have to schedule that. I've got Finance Committee at 4:30 on the 14th. Don Yanatuno's committee is the 15th at 7:30. Those are the two for Zoom. Is there anyone else I'm missing?
Anything else? Anything else for the good of the order? Councilman Schuff.
Yeah, wanted to ask a question here. I know Dawn's committee's meeting here on the 15th, but so the last few weeks in the morning, a few friends and I, we've been walking early in the morning, doing all the different city trails, the county trails, just kind of getting out and early in the morning. But as we were doing the Benner Street Trail here last week, looks like the thing could use a little bit of a facelift, or could use a little love down there on Benner Street. Some of the bushes and trees are starting to get a little overgrown. Just looks like it could use a good manicure. But I guess what I wanted to ask council and the administration is, what are the chances, or is it a possibility to maybe put together a list or get volunteers, kind of like we do with the planters downtown or the garden beds through Rotary Trail? I mean, I know there's a lot of different volunteers, but one person had spoken up during our walk, wanted to donate some time or to kind of get this parts of Benner Street Trail, basically from 53 down to the train depot owned by Larry Breidenball. What's council's feelings or thoughts on that, if people wanted to kind of step up and go down there and start cleaning some of these parts of the trail or legs of the trail up and get them spruced up a little bit?
Are you volunteering?
I mean, yeah, I'd be willing, but I know there's some other people that were willing to do it as well. If you walk that trail, though, just it could use some love.
I hate to dump anything more on the mayor.
I don't know if it could go to committee.
What's that?
I didn't know if it could go to committee or Parks and Recreation or something like that. I know there's people that step up to kind of do certain legs of these trails. Like I said, if you walk them, they're just they could use some work.
Yeah, Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry. Thank you, Council President. I think Councilman Sheff has a great idea, but I believe we're going to need a coordinator, and I don't think it has to be the mayor. And the reason I say a coordinator is if we just tell the public, have at it to Benner Street Trail, have at it to a county trail, they could be out there whacking bushes, taking the wrong things in and out. So I think there has to be some structure here instead of everyone take it upon themselves to help out. So, and I don't want to be the coordinator.
Councilwoman Yanatuno, what do you think?
Well, I keep wondering as he's talking if there's a liability issue for the city. Like say somebody's got hedge trimmers down there and they cut their finger or whatever, you know, what happens with liability on that kind of stuff?
Is it any different than the flower beds and the bushes that we do now down by the river, the Rotary Parks? And people take power tools and stuff down there to clean those up.
Like I said, I'm just asking. I'm not sure.
Law Director.
Yeah, we have the volunteers. It's pretty organized, but they sign a document that they assume the risk and take the responsibility and release the city from any liability that may arise from their activities in the program. So it is a kind of a well organized. It's not just have at it type of arrangement.
Yeah, sorry if I sounded that. Yeah, it wasn't a have at it or free for all type setting, but something to organize, kind of like what they do with the downtown planners and Mark and like Hayes's corner there that they do. They keep landscaped and mulched. It just makes the city look a lot nicer. I think it frees up some of our parks department.
Councilman Leopard has a comment.
My first thought too was liability. And when we take a look at that trail between Sandusky and Hopewell, I would think our Parks Department next year could probably handle that, because you can drive a pickup truck down there and do whatever deed you need to do with a battery powered trimmer or whatever, weed whacker, you know. And we also have, you know, our part-timers as well. Hopefully we'll have them back next year in the Parks Department. But that would clean up, that would take care of about 50% of the Benner Street area.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't talking between 53 and Hopewell. That's kind of a separate area. I was talking the portions that are paved or have like the thinner trail from 53 all the way down to North Monroe. That I was talking about those 4 separate legs of the trail between Perry and Market and those areas over there by St. Mary's.
Councilwoman Yanatuno?
With the Parks Department being shorthanded this year, Steve's comments are good. Maybe next year we could kind of keep that in mind. But since Councilman Schuff sounded like he'd kind of be interested to spearhead that a little bit, if he'd want to coordinate that and make sure they sign papers to not hold us liable, I think we could do that as a stopgap for right now and try to do better with it next spring.
Councilman Jones?
Thank you. Again, I understood Councilman Schuff wasn't just speaking of the Benner Street Trail from Sandusky to Monroe Street. He was talking about other trails in general in the Tiffin area, correct? Councilman Schuff?
I was talking about just the Benner Street Trail.
Okay, I understand. All right, thank you.
Councilman Gillig, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilman Schuff, I really like where your head's at. I would also maybe like to see this go to a committee, just so we could maybe draw up some parameters, get with our law director and really fine tune what the downtown planter folks do. But I also, I'm thinking of all the years that we've done Oakley Park cleanup. I'm sure that'd be something that they could almost have at, kind of with impunity, raking up leaves and things of that nature. But I would love to see this go to committee for some further exploration, if possible.
Yeah, I would too. I'd like to see it at least be discussed or at least looked at.
Councilwoman Yanatuno?
Well, let me volunteer to amend my meeting to include discussion on the Benner Street and other walking trails in Tiffin.
Thank you. Anything else? City Administrator Thornton.
I don't often ask to speak at the end of the meeting, but I was looking at my calendar this week, and this was the week that Mark Hayes passed away on September 10th. That'll be this Thursday. And Jim Roberts then died 4 days later on September 14th. I know the council doesn't have a meeting prior to those dates, and I just thought it might be appropriate to mention, as I'm sure the council shares my continued grief over the loss of those 2 fine gentlemen. I also just received a message that George Tolford died last evening at Riverside Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. George lived in Tiffin for 50 years, worked with Webster, was my neighbor for a number of years. And he apparently passed away after a brief illness at the Riverside Hospital ICU last evening. So I wanted to share that with council members who also may have known George very well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you, Dale. I knew George. George and I were friends for a long time, and yeah, I got the news yesterday that he had passed away, and it's always a shock when you lose somebody you love, and he was a great person, just as Mark and Jim were, and it goes to the fragility of life, So that's why we need to always remember that and remember how we treat one another, and we're here for a short period of time. Councilman Perry.
Obviously, Mark Hayes is, the biggest reason I'm here today with you guys. A lot of respect I had for that man, and my thoughts and prayers go out to the Hayes family during this week. I'm sure it's gonna be a rough one for him. So.
Anyone else? Well, God bless you all, and we stand adjourned. Take care.
Night, everybody.
Great evening.